Welcome, one and all.
Check out this week's live stream.
Welcome to the show.
Hello, I'm Jimmy, and welcome to my house.
Ballcat Nation. Assemble.
Let's go. Welcome in, everybody, to a Saturday evening crossover event. This is a fun one. There are going to be some new faces. There's some new faces on the screen for some of the YouTube viewers, and for people that are catching on the podcast, might sound a little bit different as we are doing a YouTube and podcast combination here with the Baseballin Podcast team here. With me, we have. I want to introduce top right. It is Ted Gaiman. Ted, welcome in, my friend.
How's it going, Jim?
Doing good. And at the bottom of the screen, it is Corbin Young. Corbin, welcome in.
How's it going?
We are here to do our sort of second baseman. We're going to dive into second baseman today. We're going to talk about the top second baseman. We're going to do a dive into the whole fantasy aspect to this. We are going to be talking about, the sleepers, who you want to get in, who you want to avoid, who's going to break out, and who are the best second basemen. And I've got two of the best in fantasy baseball with me here with Corbin and Ted. So you guys are in good hands. We are going to dive into this, and we're going to have some fun here. So let's start right from the top. Let's get right to sort of what we discussed at the beginning, or what we discussed on the description of what we're doing. Let's dive into second baseman. Let's start with, and I'm going to start with Ted. We're going to get right into the second baseman here, and then we're going to get into the deeper part of this. But let's talk about second base. It is in fantasy. It can be a fascinating position, but I want to get. Ted, I want to get your feel, because we're going to do a top five. That's how we're going to start right into this. We're going to get right into this. We're going to do a top five situation. And Ted, give me your top five with this second base position, because we were talking about it beforehand. It feels like it gets kind of thin, kind of quick. But who are your top five?
My top five are in order: Albies, Whit Merrifield 2, DJ LeMahieu 3. I have Jeff McNeil 4, and Jose Altuve 5th. Albies is the only one I feel is who can really contribute in all five categories. That's why I have him ranked the highest. Plus, he's flashed that home run upside that he can do. We've seen him go on some tears in short amounts of time. So I like Albies a lot.
Yeah, Albies can be good. Corbin, give me your top five.
Yeah, I think I went Ozzie Albies 1. I just love the kind of power speed combination with a good batting average. DJ LeMahieu 2. And I think Gleyber Torres is kind of in for a bounce back. I think he struggled a bit with some injuries last year. Just a ton of hitter-friendly ballparks in the AL East. And then I still believe in Ketel Marte. And I kind of had this split with Merrifield or Brandon Lau. I think Brandon Lau is definitely in for a good season once again. But Whit Merrifield's kind of that sneaky, batting average guy that can steal some bases. So
yeah. I'm with you on Whit Merrifield. You'll see with my top five, I'm in on Whit Merrifield. I've got him too. I like DJ LeMahieu at the top, followed by Merrifield, then Ozzie. It's really a tough decision between Ozzie and Whit, and then Gleyber, and then Cavan. So I got to have a Blue Jay in here, and I do think Cavan Biggio has a nice season. He's going to have a better lineup around him now. He's going to have Semien maybe batting around him, Springer batting around him. Got to see how the Blue Jays lineup shakes out. But with an improved lineup there, Torres, give him more games, get him healthy, get him back facing the Orioles, and you'll see some good stuff from Torres. So this is how we all shake out with our top fives. And I think if we're looking for a consensus on the top five, looking at this, we got Ozzie Albies 1, DJ LeMahieu 2, Whit Merrifield 3, then 4, it's Gleyber Torres, and then 5 would sort of be a tie between Ketel Marte and Jeff McNeil. So I think a lot of folks would have something similar, as it kind of goes through when you're looking at your top second baseman and heading into the 2021 season. DJ's back in New York. I think he's going to crank. Ozzy is going to be looking for a better season, but they're going to do great. So good stuff here to kind of kick us off as we look at the best second baseman. Now let's send the conversation in a new direction here, and looking at the guys who are being drafted in fantasy baseball. Corbin, let's start with you. Who do you think is maybe the most overvalued guy? Now, for anybody that's wondering, we are going to be using the NFBC numbers from the last month, basically, just checking the average draft position for a lot of these guys. Corbin, who do you think is the most overvalued player at second base right now over the last month of drafts?
For me, it's Kevin Biggio. I know he's got like the dual or triple eligibility, but I just, for batting average leagues, I just worry about that. He's never been a good batting average guy. OBP leagues, you'll buy her in, right? He's just like the high walk guy, gets on base. I do love that he hits a ton of live drives, but it's just the batting average, just like 250 or 234. Like I just can't quite do that. I'll probably pivot to any of the other guys that I mentioned in the top five. Interestingly, he used to struggle quite a bit in the minors with like caught stealing and stuff. But I think he was like 20 for 20 the past two seasons.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, like that's
can't throw him out.
Yeah. So it maybe just been smart on the base paths. He definitely, I think peak projection, he probably hits like 250. Like you talked about, they got an amazing lineup. So he's going to, eat up some counting stats. And then he's probably more like a 2015 guy, which isn't terrible, but it's just the batting average that I think with that pick, like, I think I'd even rather go with like a Whit Merrifield that could give me similar, not as much power, but, much better batting average. And so.
Yeah, for reference, on the NFBC, Biggio is the fourth second baseman coming off the board at around pick 60. So that is that. Ted, give me yours. What is your when you're looking at second baseman, you're looking at maybe who's a little too overhyped, who's getting drafted too early in drafts, who's too high? Who are you going with here?
My choice was Brandon Lau. I do like him as a player. I think he's really talented. He hits the ball hard. But it's just the context of where he's being drafted. NFBC ADP, he was going 75, and the next three picks off the board are Javier Baez, Michael Conforto, and Hyun-Jin Ryu. So out of those four players, would you really rather take Brandon Lau than them? I can't see myself taking him just given the price tag. Now, if it went down, sure. I actually got a pretty good couple shares of him last year, and he was solid for me, but just where he's going now, it's not worth it.
I was looking at it, and I mean, really, I was watching everybody and how was LeMahieu's, the highest, and Albies and Witt and Cabin and Keston, and I really didn't have much issue until, and it took me, I actually went just outside of the top 10. I went to Dylan Moore. Now, Dylan Moore is going 11th, so it's not like this is egregious or anything like that. So for the most part, I think second base is sort of falling in line nicely at this point. You could argue some guys are going higher, maybe over other guys at other positions. But I feel like Dylan Moore, I'm just not going to buy it. I think there's limited potential. He had a nice little 60-game set last year, but I just don't think it's there. I'm not buying that jump. I'm really not buying the jump for most guys in the limited season, because I think that it probably would have evened out. He didn't have time to, go into a slump where he, didn't hit a homer for a month or anything like that. So, and there's guys behind him that I think are worth that are safer bets. I would probably take Moustakas over him. I would probably take Cronenworth or Madrigal. I would probably feel more comfortable with those guys in the upside. They're younger, higher upside. I would go with more if I would move more down a little bit if I was having that conversation. I do want to bring up, because we've talked about Biggio twice now in this, and I want to get both of your thoughts on this situation. The Blue Jays heading into this season are going to have three players that are going to have second base eligibility. Semien's going to start the year with shortstop. So the fact that it's the Blue Jays aside, what's your thoughts on drafting? What's your thoughts on so many guys from one team being so position eligible? Does it matter? Do you care about that? Biggio's going to have second base. Gurriel's going to have second base in some areas. Semien will gain that second base eligibility. Is it something you'd stay away from? Ted, I'll go back to you. Is it something you stay away from? Something you don't care about? What's your thoughts on one team having so many second base eligible guys?
For those three individual players specifically, I don't really think I care too much. Just because they're all going to be playing every day for the most part, whether Gurriel's playing in the outfield and Biggio's playing third or the outfield. I mean, they're all going to get their at bats. They're all going to get their plate appearances. So for that, I don't really care too much.
Sure. Corbin, are you kind of in line with that?
Yeah, I think stuff like that will kind of work itself out. I think if anything, I feel like, and we're not talking about outfield, but I feel like Teoscar Hernandez in that lineup is probably at most risk for moving out, and Kevin Biggio can play everywhere, right? Like he can play like second, third, probably first.
Good defensive player.
Outfield. So I mean, he's going to find a home regardless. I think, assuming Semien 6 in the lineup as well. But so I think it'll work itself out, and he should have some full-time playing time, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah. Let's talk about. Let's start getting into some of those guys that have the upside, have maybe a breakout or just the opportunity where maybe in a draft somebody will be sleeping on them. Let's get into some sleepers. I think everybody is loves to know about some sleepers before fantasy baseball. When they're putting their draft prep together. Let's start, Corbin. Let's go with you for who's your sleeper at this second base position.
Yes, a guy that I think is kind of undervalued, but he's kind of moved up recently is Nick Solak. The team contest isn't great, but I feel like he's a bit undervalued. Sure. He doesn't like wow you with any tool. I think over the past 2 seasons he had 7 home runs, 46 runs, 40 RBI, 9 steals with a 277 batting average. Not great. He's always had a high batting average. His hit tool is kind of the strongest skill. He's not known for the hard hit metrics, but he did have career best of 40% hard hit rate and 9% barrel rate. I think the 9% barrel rate was in 2019 and the 4.7% barrel rate in 2020. But again, I think it's just like we talked about earlier. Once you get past like the first 10 to 12 second base eligible guys, it kind of like it's more you're more in that. Low counting stats, probably some power and speed, batting average kind of guys. So it's just kind of, what you expect out of that. But he's a guy that I'm looking at if I miss out on that first tier. So,
okay. Ted, what about you? Who do you think is undervalued right now? Maybe people are overlooking and maybe should give some more respect to at second base.
I got Jose Altuve. So he's going around pick 100 right now, number 9 second baseman off the board. 15 NFBC drafts, that's around 6 or 7. And I mean, the guy was literally the MVP in 2017. 2018, he was a top 5 pick. 2019, he did struggle a bit for a half, but then he ended up lighting it up in the second half. And, he had a bad 2020. But as we've been saying, for a lot of these players, you kind of just have to throw 2020 out the window. And he's definitely a good bounce back candidate, and given the lineup context there, he's projected to hit first according to Roster Resource, and he's got some good bats behind him there. So I like Altuve a lot.
For sure. I'm going to go with Max Muncy. He's going to probably play every position but shortstop for the Dodgers, but he will have second base eligibility. I'm a Muncy guy. I think that 190 batting average that he posted last year is just that's going to be a blip on the radar. I think he goes back to that 250. His metrics support that he should bounce back to 250. I would not expect to repeat, and he right now is going around the same area as Altuve is. I would take Muncy over McNeil. I would take Muncy over Marte. I would take Muncy over Lau. I would probably have Max Muncy just outside the top 5. I think that Max Muncy has some good potential. And again, that multiple, you can play him at first, you can play him at third. If you play middle infielder, corner outfield, you get 2 other spots you can put him. So Max Muncy, I love the versatility there as well. Let me ask you, let's look at some deep sleepers. Let's go deeper into the second base position here. Let's go, Ted, first. Who is your deep sleeper at that second base position?
My deep sleeper is Cesar Hernandez. Guy's like the most boring player in fantasy, but he always puts up pretty solid numbers.
Mm-hmm.
He's going ADP 363 right now, which is round 24 in your draft, the number 36 overall second baseman. But, he's a career 277 hitter, solid contributor in average runs and RBIs. And he didn't steal any bases last year, but he was 90th percentile in sprint speed, and Roster Resource does have him projected to lead off, and hitting one spot ahead of Jose Ramirez is going to increase your counting stats. So I like him a pretty good amount, especially going where he's going.
Corbin, how about you?
I have Colton Wong. He just signed with the Brewers. So his ADP is probably going to spike, right? It's right around like pick 400. Ted's over there like, oh, that's my guy.
I love him.
But I expect it to, probably hop in at least 50 to 100 picks, just now that he's got a home. Like we talked about in past episodes, I think we could probably throw out 2020 for a lot of the Cardinals, kind of strange season, right? They had some missed games. So I don't think the 2020 is, real reflection of what he could be. He's kind of got a similar profile to Nick Solak, but maybe a little less power. So Wong might, not have as much like the 15-20 home run power. He's probably more in like that 8 to 12 range. But I think he has a bit more stolen base potential than Nick Solak. And he's gonna lead off for the Brewers most likely. And he's, it's hard to. I know there's some, back and forth, but it's like Keston Hero is going to move, potentially move over to first. I think that's probably good for the whole team and the pitching in general, right? If you get a better defensive middle infielder there. So, if you can grab him, like right now, his ADP is pretty low. I think he's going to be kind of a sneaky middle infielder at second base.
He's a career 300 hitter at Miller Park too.
So he should go. He'll hit. He should fit in nicely there.
Right, much better, than St. Louis. But so it's a boost.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with, I think Nick Madrigal, but Nick Madrigal might not be deep enough. Maybe Nick Madrigal is more in that undervalued category because I think Madrigal can hit. I'm gonna go deeper down, and I'm gonna go to Nico Horner. Kind of the heralded prospect that was coming up in the Cubs system, and then 2020 just didn't work for him. Like it didn't work for a lot of guys. It didn't have enough time to get out of the slump, or maybe he was distracted by all the COVID protocols, or whatever reason. Nico Horner struggled, and his ADP right now is over 400. So he's going at the end of drafts, and I think that there's just something there. It's just going to be his age 24 season, so he's still putting it together. Again, the heralded prospect coming up. His on base was about 90 points higher than his batting average, even with a bad season. So he was still getting on base at a nice clip, a good walk rate. So to me, that's an encouraging sign that, again, it's just bad luck. Didn't have time to get hot. It was distracting, the whole situation. So I like Nico Horner to be out there. Probably as a good sleeper. People, I think, will probably have forgotten about him in many instances. And just to remind everybody that is here, thank you guys for checking in on YouTube. We are doing a crossover event with the Baseballin Podcast and Ballcap Sports. Make sure if you're here, you hit the like on YouTube. Hit that like before we wind this down or you head out. Hit that like, and also in the description are the links to Spotify and to Apple to subscribe to this podcast. So make sure you do that. Last week, we were talking about first baseman. We're going to go through this, sort of be your fantasy baseball draft prepped gurus. And then once the season starts, we'll do our analysis moving on. Let's keep it going. Prospect at a position to watch out for, just because I want to hear more on him, more on my deep sleeper. Corbin, give us your guy for the prospect at the position to watch out for.
Yeah, I'm definitely cheating here. I think he's lost his prospect or rookie eligibility, but I think Nico Horner is definitely a guy that I think is a nice kind of bench bat middle infielder guy. Another guy kind of like Nick Solak. Hit tool is kind of the best tool there. He's not going to light up the StatCast metrics or the hard hit rate. He's got a decent 22% line drive rate over the past 2 years. Projections aren't super sexy. The bat's got him for like 8 home runs, 62 runs, 52 RBI, 9 steals with a 259 batting average. But more often than not, this late, he's going to be a guy that's going to get some everyday playing time.
Right.
The way the Cubs team is kind of shaking out. So he's a guy that, he's not necessarily prospect eligible anymore, but I think over the past month, he's going like past pick 460. So he's a dude that I think, not actively targeting, but if you need kind of that flexibility, I think he's second base and shortstop.
Sure.
He's a guy to consider, yeah.
Ted, how about you?
I actually want to talk about Nico Horner for a second. So now that Jason Kipnis is gone, there's no way he's not going to play every day. And with the way that they're looking to move some of their pieces, Bryant's in a contract year, and Baez only has 1 more year of arbitration, and Rizzo's done after this year too, at least not under contract. I can't see a way where Horner's not playing every day, and to get that at pick 460 that's good value.
Definitely.
The prospect I selected was actually Brendan Rodgers, though. I think he also exhausted his prospect eligibility, but I want anybody who has a good hit tool in Coors Field, especially if they're going to be playing every day. I know Garrett Hampson's going to be a popular selection to be playing second base there, but Roster Resource has Rodgers projected to be their second baseman, and I could see Hampson ultimately playing some center field this year, just because what's his other competition, Raimel Tapia and Ian Desmond. I mean, it is the Rockies though, so I wouldn't put anything past them.
Don't hate on Raimel Tapia.
I think he's all right, but I think Hampson's got that upside,
It's time to find out what you have with Rodgers. Like you said, he certainly exhausted that prospect eligibility, but you got to find out what you have with him now. It's time. Like, he was the number 1 prospect a couple years ago, came up, didn't light the world on fire, so they got bored with him or something, and they went with McMahon, and they just forgot about Rodgers. It's time to see what they have with him, I think.
Yeah, he still only has under 130 plate appearances, so
needs more time.
And he's only 24, so he has all the upside in the world, and you're getting him at pick 486 completely free in your league. So
basically, yes. I've got. I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, Corbin.
No, I was just gonna say I think he's also kind of struggled with some injuries, so it just kind of matters staying healthy for Brendan Rodgers. And I think the upside's there.
So I'm going to go – I've got a twofer here. I got a combo meal for everybody. I'm going to go with first, I want to watch Jazz Chisholm. Now, maybe he goes back and he starts the year in the minors. So if you have like an NA spot or something in your roster, I think he'd be worth it. He's got the 55 out of 80 power and the 55 out of 80 run. When in 2019, his last year in the minors combined, he hit 21 homers and stole almost 20 bases. So now you might have to expect a 250 batting average out of it, but if you're getting steals and power from that, if you can draft the right way, I think you can absorb maybe the batting average dip that he would give you. And I also like Vidal Brujan, the 70 out of 80 run. So, I mean, this guy's going to be lighting the base paths on fire, and the 60 out of 80 hit. So the power isn't there with him, but the hitting is there. The speed is there. I like those two guys. Now, Brujan will certainly start the year in the minors, but it is somebody that you got to watch. You have to put on your watch list, because if he does come up, and watch what's going on with the Rays. If Willie Adames gets hurt, or if there's any injuries, then that could maybe spell a path for somebody like Brujan. Jazz will certainly be up sooner. Maybe Jazz starts, maybe he's the first month of the season, he's at AAA. Or he could break with the club. Who knows? We'll see how spring training goes.
Yeah, they gave up a lot to get Jazz. They're very high on him. He was part of the Gallon deal to send him to Arizona.
Yep. I think there's some good stuff there.
Yeah, actually, I got one more guy to monitor. I kind of forgot about him because I feel like he just gets tossed around with the Dodgers. But Gavin Lux, his ADP is probably a bit higher than I'd like it to be, just because he's right now slated to be on the bench. But the way the Dodgers roll, I wouldn't be surprised if they move him around or he doesn't play as much. But I feel like, and this is just a gut feeling, but I feel like he's gonna be. It might not be this year, but next year it could be like that Kyle Tucker kind of guy where everybody's like, he sucks, but he's actually really good, but just hasn't been given the time to work things out and given full-time playing time. So Gavin Lux is a dude, potentially, if he gets full-time playing time or at least like 500 plate appearances, could be kind of have that like league winning upside. So he's a guy to monitor.
Yeah, and maybe he could get more playing time. We got to see if the Dodgers are going to continue spending money and if they're going to go get Justin Turner, or if Justin Turner, the money the Dodgers were earmarking for Turner went to Bauer. And if that's the case, then that'll open up a spot in the infield for Lux to maybe play every day, or at least get a much increased share of the playing time. Let's do this. Is there a player at the position that you absolutely won't draft, that you want nothing to do with? Ted, let's start with you.
I don't think there is, but if I had to say one, like gun to my head, I'd probably pick DJ LeMahieu, just because of where he's going. I'm not going to use a second or third round pick on him. He's only a 3-category contributor. He hit 10 home runs last year, being in the bottom 9% in barrel rate. I'm not buying the power. And if he doesn't give you home runs and he doesn't give you steals, and he only gives you runs, RBIs, and batting average, is that really worth a second or third round pick in a 15-team league? It's just not someone I'm going to be targeting.
I do feel like people will be drafting expecting something similar to 2020, and that's you just got to sort of check yourself, because that batting average is probably going to come down 30 to 40 points. He's probably going to hit 5 to 10 less home runs, and that's not a knock. He would still have a good season if that happened.
Yeah, he'll still be a top 5 second baseman.
Yeah, but to your point, to draft him that high, there's other players there. There's other value there. And he's not in a contract year anymore. Those things
he got
play
paid.
a role. He's set now. He's good. He's not trying to play for a contract.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind him. He is kind of that weird enigma, right? Where it's like he doesn't have all like the hard hit metrics to back up, or the barrel rate's like absurdly low, but it's got triple eligibility. I think it just depends on what my roster looks like at that point, like with my first, or depending on the league size for first or second pick. I think it depends on what I got. But if I went like I double tapped on pitchers, I may consider a guy like that. Hopefully Ozzie Albies is there, but I feel like he might get hyped up as well before LeMahieu. But
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how LeMahieu goes, because I do have a feeling you'll have a handful of people that just want to eat him right up. And then, I will probably, I think I had him as my number 2, but I probably won't get him. It's not that I don't want to get him. I just don't know if I'll either pay that much in an auction draft or reach that high in a snake. Corbin, how about you? Who is the player that you absolutely won't draft?
Dylan Moore for my Seattle Mariners. He's just one of those guys, and there's a few guys like this that it's just a bit of an overreaction, I think, to the 2020 campaign. Last year he hit 8 home runs, 26 runs, 17 RBI, and 12 steals with a 255 batting average. Before that, in 2019, he had 9 home runs, 11 steals, and a 206 batting average. So it just kind of, a guy that, had a great hot streak, came out of nowhere. Hard hit metrics are pretty good, 44% hard hit rate, 13.8% barrel rate, all kind of above average. But I just, I've seen this before with hitters. It's just a small sample, and with the little track record, I'm not willing to just grab him here. It's just someone I'm fading, and I'm probably not drafting. Even when you look at the projections, like 18 steals or 18 home runs and 23 steals looks pretty good, but a 225 batting average, and I'll be honest, on probably one of the worst offenses in baseball right now. Like how
many opportunities is he going to have? That's a good point. Yeah, I'm with you. I think I mentioned Dylan Moore earlier that I feel like he's a little high right now at his draft spot. So yeah, Dylan Moore, I think we can maybe scratch that off. I'm with you on that one.
I don't hate him, but just pick 120 is too high. You're paying the premium for steals, and it just doesn't make sense to take him there when you could get Wong 60 to 70 picks later.
Right. Yeah, I have a feeling Dylan Moore more times than not ends up getting auto drafted by somebody who's not in the league and ends up getting stuck with him. I think Dylan Moore is an auto draft casualty this season. So all right, I'll get to mine. I have a feeling, this is, Blue Jay fans in here unite on this one. For fantasy reasons and for personal reasons, I won't touch Rougned Odor in a fantasy baseball situation. The dude sucks. Okay, he might hit. Maybe he'll luck himself into 30 home runs, but he's going to hit 150 along the way. So from a fantasy perspective, he's absolutely going to tank your bat. You will lose batting average because of Rougned Odor single-handedly, and he might help you with the move up one spot in home runs. So he'll kill you in batting average. He might help you move up one spot in home runs. So I'm staying away from Rougned Odor for many reasons. I wouldn't have anything to do with him. Let me ask you guys, what do you think about? This is sort of like an off second base topic, but just a general fantasy topic. When it comes to, because I just mentioned it, when it comes to auction drafts and snake drafts, do you guys have a preference of what you like more? Corbin, I'll start with you. Do you like auction over snake or snake over auction? What do you think?
I've probably done less auctions than I have snake drafts. I do like the idea of an auction where you kind of have a shot at every single guy you want, or at least a chance to bid on every single guy you want. Mm-hmm. The hard thing with auctions is that sometimes it's like you have to set aside like a little bit more time to draft, right? Like it's not.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Somebody bids and the timer adds up.
Takes forever.
Yeah. So in those types of leagues, I think once you have kind of a strategy that you're going in with and just kind of monitoring how people are spending and stuff like that, I think again, I haven't done a ton of auctions, but when I have, one of the lessons I've learned is like, making sure you're pacing out the money that you have, for a certain position. You don't want to get to the end and you can't even bid like $4 or something because you've spent too much for, so many guys. So I think that's where it gets kind of tricky because when there's the ebbs and flows of the auction, a lot of times in the middle, or sometimes like you find these guys, you're like, wow, how come, this guy wasn't bid on? And, and then you're like, wow, he just went for $15 or something like that. And you would have paid like $10 more. So I think it's just kind of seeing and watching. There's, later in the draft when people have spent their money, I think you're going to find some bargains, but, obviously you just got to play it and not, wait too long or spend too much up front. So,
yeah. Ted, what are your thoughts on auction versus snake? Anyone that you prefer, like more than the other one?
For redraft, I prefer snake, and for dynasty, I prefer auction as salary. I do that in one 2014 dynasty league I'm in. It mirrors Scott White from CBS, a dynasty league that he had set up years ago. He put out his league constitution, and we ultimately took it and ran with it, and just did we did that, and I love that league. The way everything's set up with increasing salaries yearly. That's the main thing I like about auctions, is using it as a player salary moving forward.
Right. Yeah. What about, and just when you're putting your strategy together, when you're ranking guys, do you put any credence into, do you want to have 2 second basemen on your team, 1 second baseman on your team? Do you have, just getting back to the second baseman talk, do you have any feeling on if you sort of strategically pick and make sure you have an extra second baseman for your bench. What are your Ted? What about you? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends on league context. If you have the bench spots to spare and you can make it out in your head of I could utilize this bench spot for a bench second baseman, then yes. But if you're talking NFBC leagues, I don't really have any thought as to how I'm going to use my bench other than getting the most upsidey guys that I can, in hopes that those later round picks end up being lottery tickets and hitting, your Corbin Burns from last year, for example.
Right.
That's kind of what you're hoping for out of those bench spots. So I don't really think too much into that. And at that, second middle or at that middle infield spot, generally you're going to see yourself with a shortstop more often than you would a second baseman, just given the depth of the position. Yeah.
What about you, Corbin? Do you agree with that?
I think in deeper leagues, I'm more looking for the boring guys. Like if we're talking about second base or the position, I'm trying to get guys that are going to get some playing time, right? Like I'm looking at a Jonathan Scope, who I think just signed, or some of these guys that are not super exciting, but I know they're going to play. Because in deeper leagues, it's going to be harder to replace those guys. Definitely, like maybe 10 or 12 team leagues, I'm probably going to go for some upside. Like I might stash a guy that. But just because the replacement value on the waiver wire is going to be easier for me to find. But I think the worst thing in deeper leagues, especially in like roto style, like you don't want to take that zero, or like I talked about last year, like you don't want some guy that's catching like 2 days a week to just like give you negative value at the catcher position. So I think it's like just not overlooking some of those boring guys and taking into consideration what playing time looks like later, in terms of my bench spots, I guess.
Sure. What do you think about this? And I'll go back to you, Ted, about does your favorite team come into play at all when you're drafting? Are you at all trying to make sure you get at least one Cardinal, or do you stay away from the Cardinals because you don't want to be that invested? What are your thoughts? I mean, listen, you're gonna have a couple of good ones to pick from this year with Arenado and Goldie. Do you put anything into that? Do you you're looking at it? There's 3 guys you're looking at, and one of them's a Cardinal, and 2 of them are not. Do you go Cardinal? What's your philosophy? What's your take on your when your favorite team comes into play?
I think it kind of just depends on the value. When we were talking about first base last week, I mentioned Paul Goldschmidt as somebody I liked. Just given his draft status, I think he was going around pick 100 last time I checked. But to be honest, I don't really, go too much into that. If the value's there, like, Jack Flaherty is like the 7th or 8th pitcher off the board. If I could get the value, I take it, but I think about my fantasy team over my baseball team when I'm actually drafting.
Right. Corbin, how about you? The Mariners fan thing, this is probably a tough one right now, because I don't know how much fantasy relevancy there is, unfortunately, out there. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the future is bright, right? We got Julio Rodriguez, Jared Kelenic. But yeah, no, I'm kind of I was looking at the Mariners lineup. The only real fantasy relevant guys that are probably going to get drafted on a lot of teams are going to be like Dylan Moore, Kyle Lewis, Kyle Seager is a guy that I'm digging, in third base a little late. Mitch Haniger is just a guy that, I'll wish for, just kind of based on the injury history and stuff like that. I think with Ted, no, I think, like I said, Kyle Seager is probably the only Mariner that I'll probably end up rostering a ton if I can. But I'm not, some pitchers are kind of exciting, in terms of Marco Gonzalez, Yusei Kikuchi, stuff like that. But, it's no, it's been quite a while since I've actively targeted a Mariner.
Sure. So, Kyle Lewis is exciting. That outfield is going to be fun in a year or two with what's coming with Rodriguez and Kelenic and Lewis. Some good stuff on the way. Everybody that is watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit the like if you're into the fantasy baseball talk. If you play fantasy baseball, make sure you hit the like. And for anybody that, again, on YouTube, this is sort of a crossover between Ball Cap Sports on YouTube and the Fantasy Baseballin Podcast. We do a Fantasy Baseballin Podcast once a week. These are my cohorts, Corbin Young and Ted Gaiman, and we usually do this once a week. And sometimes there's a rotation. Sometimes I'm in it. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes Ted's in it. Sometimes he's not. We kind of rotate, but for the most part, we all try to get together and make sure in the description you guys click to whether you like to catch your podcast on Spotify or you like to catch them on, iTunes. Links are in the description for you guys to subscribe to the podcast. You can go back and hear our first base conversation. These are essentially timeless between now and the start of the season, so you can take them and listen to them at any point. Let me get you. We do like to do a weekly question here. Let me get your thought, because the Super Bowl is coming up. We're gonna interact with the chat here for a minute. Those that are in the chat room right now, what do you guys want? We got Bucks and we got Chiefs. There will be a poll out on the community page, but if you want the Bucks, type Bucks. If you want the Chiefs, type Chiefs. I want to know what the chat room is feeling on the Super Bowl picks, and then I want to get. Before I get your Super Bowl picks, guys, I want to know what your favorite Super Bowl snacks are. So give me that. Ted, what is your favorite Super Bowl snack?
Oh, I'm a big chips and dip guy. Whatever dips around, I'm going for it. But I can't remember the last time I haven't had wings during the Super Bowl, and that's always my go-to.
Yep. I'm down with that too. Corbin, how about you?
Beer, is that a snack?
Yes, definitely.
Specifically IPAs. And maybe I might take a nap, during halftime, but
sure.
Beer is a snack.
Can you? I don't even know the halftime show. It will be worth taking a nap, because that's usually an event that they plan, and I don't even know how they're going to do this whole halftime show thing. It's going to be a snooze fest. I have a feeling. Just looking in the chat room, it looks like we have primarily some Chiefs. We have some Chiefs fans or some Chiefs rooters in the chat room. So Super Bowl is going to be fun. Once the Super Bowl is done, everybody, all focus turns to baseball, in my opinion. Spring training will be right around the corner. Fantasy baseball drafts will really start to fire up. You can go sign up on Yahoo. We are doing a fantasy baseball league on the Ballcap Sports channel that is full right now. At least the first room is. Might open up a second room if the demand is there. So this was, again, a fun crossover event here with Ballcap Sports and with the Fantasy Baseballin Podcast here. Ted, any final sage words of advice for folks that are watching here on the channel or listening about drafting for second baseman?
Take Cesar Hernandez in the 20-something round and
all right,
reap the rewards at your middle infield spot. That's it.
There you go. Corbin, how about you?
Don't be afraid to lock one up a little early. I think, like we talked about, there's, maybe a clear kind of top 5-ish or so. And then it gets a little murky in the middle. I think the biggest, mistake that I've made before is like, you're like, I'm just going to wait for this 1 or 2 guys. And then it doesn't end up working out. And then you're screwed and you end up grabbing in like Cronin or something, somebody you don't necessarily want. So I think, for second base, it's worth grabbing at the top if you're able to.
Okay. Yeah. It has been, it's been fun. Again, thank you everybody that is listening on the podcast. Thank you for listening. We will be back next week. I believe we're going to move over to the other middle infield position. It's either going to be shortstop or we're going to go to the corner and go to third. So watch out for that next week. If you, again, are just watching us on YouTube, make sure you click the link in the description and subscribe to the podcast either on Spotify or Apple to stay with us weekly as we head up to the baseball season. We're doing those every single week. So again, Ted and Corbin, thank you for joining us, for joining me here on the channel. And everybody in the chat room, thank you for being here on a Saturday evening. I hope everybody is having a good time, a good evening, a good weekend. Thank you guys again. Thank you everybody in the chat. Thank you everybody listening on the podcast. We will be back again next week with more Fantasy Baseballin'.